Well, you guys have done it again. I have managed to accumulate 60 foundations. I did a foundation a day series on my channel, and this had to be sometime at the end of last year. I wonder if it even rolled into this year, I'm not sure. Where I went through and I retested all the foundations in my collection and decided which ones were gonna stay and which ones were gonna go. But then sometime this year, I went through a phase where I was looking for the best mattifying foundations. So I accumulated a bunch more, including some that you guys even recommended to me as good mattifying foundations so that I could do a roundup video. I do have that up on my channel. I have some good recommendations. I have found some really good ones that I really enjoy for a more mattifying base, but there was some that I tested that I didn't immediately fall in love with or weren't as mattifying as they claimed. And also, I do this thing where I go back and forth between the kinds of finishes that I like. Same thing with colors of blush. So it's good to have differences in your collection just depending upon when you switch back and forth. But I do feel like there is a middle of the road that I'm looking for. Something that's pretty long wearing, that's not too drying on the skin, and it can go from light to full coverage. But maybe I'm looking for more medium coverage at the current moment. So some of these I know to be a little bit older, and some of these I have pulled out of reference where I keep bins in my closet so that if there's a product that I think is popular or I'm going to want to talk about or reference, I can pull that out. That's pretty much like this section over here, and just below the e.l.f. Soft Glam foundation I have the foundations that I've kept for reference, but I do like to go through those occasionally to get rid of the ones that I didn't end up talking about so that I can move them along. I'll pass them along to my sister so they don't just sit in my collection and expire. I am going to be swatching everything today, you guys, and I'm ready to let's get into it so you guys can stop looking at the very tops of my foundation. I think what I'm going to do is just pull out a little bit at a time. All right, I think this is a pretty good selection here. There's definitely some in here that I know I'm gonna get rid of. I think what I'll do is literally start from the left-hand side and just go over, just to keep me from grabbing the ones that I know I wanna keep, or conversely, grabbing the ones that I know I wanna get rid of. So first up is the NYX Can't Stop, Won't Stop. This is a full coverage foundation. I got this to test for my best mattifying foundations, and this was one that made it to the top. This one is in the shade, these are always so hard with NYX. F05 is what I think the shade is. Now, mind you, I buy all my foundations online, so I don't always get the best shade match. I'm actually pretty poor at shade matching myself, although there's a lot of foundations that say they're light with neutral undertones, which is what I gravitate towards, and then they don't come out that way. It seems like this pump is broken, and I've used this foundation like maybe half a dozen times, but this is not coming out. Is it like locked? Like what's going on here? Okay, I don't know what was going on, but the product was like stuck in there, so it wasn't coming out. This one is more like a whipped texture. It's definitely full coverage, but it's not too drying. It's one that I really enjoy because it's not a tacky formula. It's pretty thin, which is what I look for if I'm looking for full coverage, something that really sinks into the skin nicely. I don't think it's too full coverage either, and this is a pretty good shade match for me, even though I still think this is a little bit warm, and I definitely look for more neutral or more cool tone foundations now. But this one has kind of like a peachy undertone in F05, so I feel like it works for me because I tend to have like pretty pink cheeks, even though I don't really think I have like a rosy undertone. I can get away with a lot of foundations that have a rosier undertone. Anyway, I think this shade is a pretty decent match. It's not a full coverage foundation that dries out on my skin. I think it was one of my favorite, like top 2 maybe, of the more mattifying foundations that I tested. So I'm definitely gonna hold on to this one. I just got up and turned on the fan because it's so hot where I'm filming upstairs. So hopefully this new mic does a pretty good job at not picking up the wind sound. So let's go through the next one. This is fairly new to me. I just picked this up with an AOA studio haul that I did. This is the Soft Matte Foundation, and this one is in the shade L1. This is also like a perfect shade match. And it's, again, such a lightweight formula. It's got a tack to it, so it's like decently long lasting, but it sinks into the skin really nice. It is like a perfectly soft soft matte finish. So it's not the most long lasting foundation that I have in my collection, but it is very beautiful. I feel like this is such a middle of the road foundation that would work for just so many people. Dry, combo, oily skin, because it's not heavy in either direction. It's just kind of a well-performing foundation. I have some in here that are like that are just my favorite. They will probably work for a lot of people. That's what I think this does. And it's $4. So it's the most affordable foundation I have in my collection. So I'm holding on to this one too. All right, next up is the Prada Reveal foundation. I fell in love with this when this launched last year. This one is in the shade, I might have to like pull it out of the canister to find the shade. There it is. It's LN15. So it's like blocked by the component that you stick it in, so that's what it is. This is such a beautiful like luminous matte foundation. It's again pretty lightweight and it sinks into the skin beautifully. It's very middle of the road in terms of the tackiness of its formula, but it's got such a good longevity to it. Again, it reminds me a lot of like the middle of the roadness that the AOA Studio Soft Matte foundation has. Like, it's a luminous matte, but it's almost like a soft matte, and it's such a beautiful product. I fell in love with the new releases that Prada came out with. I thought they were so good, each one of them. Even the eyeshadows I thought were such good luxury eyeshadow formula. So I'm definitely gonna hold on to this. At one point I was reaching for that nonstop, and I've since kind of like moved on from it, but it's still such a good foundation. The next one up is the Urban Decay Vice Bond foundation. Now I got this in a shade that's too dark and too warm. It's in 6 Fair Warm, but when I picked this up on Sephora's website, it was the first day it was exclusive to the app, and they didn't have the descriptions on the website just yet of what the shades represented. So I didn't see that this was Fair Warm. I was just going by 6, and I was going by like what it looked like in the pictures, which is like the worst thing to do, I swear. This is such a different formula in my collection. It is so thin, but it's medium to full coverage like immediately, and it's self-setting. So it sets down pretty quickly. You gotta rub it in pretty fast, but it's for that reason such a long-lasting foundation, but it's not overly drying, which I think is really important, especially for like this powder-based formula that this is. So even though it's too deep for me, I can still get away with it. I want to. I would rather not repurchase this in a lighter shade, but just know it's not my shade, but I'm gonna hold on to it. Now this next one from Ritual Defeat is the 3-drop weightless serum foundation. When this first came out, I didn't like it. And then later on, and I think as my skin started to change, if you guys are not new to my channel, you know, I used to have really dry skin, and then I changed skincare or hormones changed. I don't really know, but I started to develop really combo oily skin. When my skin changed, I thought this foundation was so much better. So truly, when they say 3 drops, I think that's too much. I think 1.5 takes you your entire complexion. Can you just see how lightweight this is? And how like spreadable this is. It's such an interesting oil-based formula, but it's still kind of a matter foundation on the finish once it dries down, even though it's this really lightweight oil-based foundation. It's really interesting because you'd think being like oil-based, it would be good for dry skin. But for me, when I had dry skin, I didn't like it. It was too dry. Again, when my skin changed to combo, this just worked a lot better because it really does dry down to almost this powdery finish. But the oil-basedness, it feels warm on the skin. It's really kind of cool. And by the way, this is in the shade Potion 120, and it's a little bit deep for me. Again, I still think I can make it work. I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with this foundation. I've worn it again recently. It's just not my favorite over others. So when I'm making decisions to pare down my collection, it's because there are others in my collection that I know that I reach for more than this one, and I need to give love to those ones. So I am going to pass this one along. Next up, the Clarins Everlasting Youth Fluid. I've wanted to love this, I really do. It's kind of like a luxurious finish on the skin, but it's a little bit too thick. It doesn't sink in the greatest. Like, you can see that it's a more thick foundation. Ooh, and it like coagulates like every time I let it sit for too long. Anyway, when it's this thick consistency, thick consistencies like this just don't sink into my skin, and so they separate when my oils are kind of breaking them apart. So that's what this does. It is really beautiful finish. It just doesn't have the wear that I wish that it did. It just breaks apart on my skin. And also, most of KARIM's stuff is very highly scented, and this is no exception. So if you don't like things that are fragranced, you wouldn't like this. And this one is in the shade 103N, but I'm going to pass this one along. All right, next up is these two. The Revlon Illuminance foundation is one of my favorite drugstore foundations. My grandmother, who has really dry skin now, has like asked me what foundations would you recommend for me, but she doesn't really shop at like Sephora or more expensive places. Like she doesn't really shop online for makeup. She still goes to the drugstore. So I'm like, okay, you have to try the Revlon Illuminance foundation. This is one of my favorite for a couple of reasons. It's super lightweight while offering medium coverage. It sinks into the skin beautifully, but it has lasting power. It's so almost perfect for what I like. It's like slightly radiant, but you can powder over this and make this like a much more mattified foundation. It's such a thin formula. It's customizable. You know, if you didn't want to powder, you could keep it a little bit radiant, but then if you did, this mattifies super well. And I have a couple of foundations that are like that, where they're so thin that they mattify like extremely well if you powder on top of them with the right powder. And they make them such a beautiful, long-lasting formula, even though they're not like radiant anymore. And that's what this does. So I don't think she powders very heavily. So I think she does get a lot of the hydration from the formula in this. And I think that's why she really enjoys it. So this is one of my two favorite drugstore foundations. So I'm definitely holding on to this one. And the final one is a brand new release. It's the newest one in my collection. It's the Easy Blur Natural Airbrush Foundation from Huda Beauty. This is so far absolutely gorgeous. My wear test on this is going to be up before this video because I'm doing the wear test right now, and I am freaking loving this. This is such a beautiful, like, it's just like it says, you guys, it's airbrushing. The smoothing that it does on the face is freaking incredible. But also I paired it with the new Easy Blur primer that Huda launched with this. And these two in combination are just an absolute beautiful base combo so far that I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled to have picked this up and like this so much. It's hydrating, it's medium coverage. Again, such a thin formula that if you didn't powder over this, it really does have like a nice luminosity to it. But then when you do, it mattifies pretty well. The biggest thing is it's just so smooth on the skin. So far, that's really what I'm liking about this. But I'm about 5 or 6 hours in at this point, and it's still just so beautiful on my combo skin. I'm definitely getting dewy at this point from my natural oil production, but it's so natural looking and so beautiful, and it's not breaking it up, that I think I'm gonna fall in love with this. This is gonna become like one of my favorites. So I'm definitely holding on to this one. All right, here's the next 6. I figure we just go through these. I'm randomly grabbing these, so though again, there's no rhyme or reason to them. The Gucci Luminous Matte Foundation, I do really enjoy this, but it's in the wrong shade for me. It's in 160N Fair, but it's super yellow. It's beautiful coverage. Again, it's a thinner formula that sinks into the skin, but it's luminous matte. I think it's like medium to full coverage. Actually, it's like more full coverage on me. With just a little bit of product, I feel like it goes a long way. But see how like yellow this is? And it always comes out way too yellow on my skin. As much as I love Gucci products and as much as I love this foundation, I wore it again recently and I was like, this is so yellow. I can't. And because it's so full coverage, it's not something that I can like make work for me. So for that reason, I am gonna pass this one along. If I do feel like I need this back in my collection, I'm gonna repurchase it in a better shade. The reason that I hate doing that is because it's so dang expensive. Like any foundation at this point, even at the drugstore, can be very pricey, but something like this, it just hurts to repurchase in a better shade because you already have it, you know? So anyway, I'm gonna pass it along because I know that I'd rather reach for ones that are just better shade matches for me, and I have ones that I feel like do that, that I loved as much as this one. So this one's gonna go. This next one here is a repurchase. It's the Pure 4-in-1 Love Your Selfie. I again got this when I was looking for more mattifying full coverage foundations for the summertime. This one is in the shade LN6, which might be a little bit deep. I can't really remember. Yeah, but this one is a re-love for me. I liked this a lot as a full coverage foundation that wasn't too drying when I had dry skin. Now, granted, if it was like a super dry day, it probably wasn't the foundation that I was reaching for. But if it was like summertime when I had dry skin, this would be good. But now having combo skin, this is gorgeous. This is like my perfect full coverage foundation that doesn't dry out, doesn't separate when I start getting oily. It's a little bit of a tackier formula, but it lasts all day. It's gorgeous on the skin. So I am going to hold on to this one, even though I think it's like a little bit deep. So far, I've been able to make this work. So for that reason, I'm going to hold on to it. All right, the L'Oreal Infallible was another one that I picked up for the video of the best mattifying foundations. Now, the L'Oreal Infallible is not necessarily like a full coverage mattifying foundation. It's more like a natural finish. This one is in 410, by the way. It is too warm for me. I think though it has a longevity that I was like looking for in the summertime, and I think this one is good. It even has the L'Oreal Pro Matte that is like super matte. I think that's what it's called. I have it in my collection. We'll go over it in a bit. But I don't even think it lasts as long as the Infallible. So I really like this. This is again one of those middle of the road foundations that I just see a lot of people getting along with. And I've only used this a couple of times for the testing of that video, and I don't think it made it in the video necessarily as like the top foundations that work for combo skin in the summertime, but I still thought it was great and probably more what I'm going to be reaching for in the upcoming months. So I'm going to hold on to this one. And next up, I have the Complete Wear Soft Matte Foundation from Moira Beauty. This one is in the shade 125C, which I actually do think is a pretty cool tone and pretty good for me. Yes, a lot came out, sorry. And this on my complexion is actually maybe a little bit too light. Oh gosh, you guys, so much came out. Let's try that again. Like you can see how lightweight that formula is. It's supposed to be lightweight, pore blurring, and reduces shine. I think it does all of that. And it's the newer version that came out from the Complete Wear Matte Foundation. I liked this one so much better than the other one. It was just like a more refined formula, more natural looking on the skin. And it still did the things that I was looking for, which is not break apart on my face, kind of give that soft matte finish that has the ability to be like a little bit radiant if you don't powder it, but also is really good at being mattified. So I preferred this one more than the Complete Wear Matte Foundation. Maybe it's just called the Complete Wear Foundation and not Soft Matte. So, and I also think this is a way better shade match for me. Like once you blend it in, you can get light coverage out of this, and so it does match my actual complexion a lot better, so I'm gonna hold on to this one. Now the Fenty Beauty stick, this has a long name, right? The Eavesdrop Blur and Smooth Tint Stick. This one is in the shade 2, which I also think is a pretty good shade match for me. I didn't really love this, again, probably back when I had dry skin, but it's probably my favorite stick foundation formula. It's definitely more like emollient and kind of oily in terms of like its counterparts, which tend to be a little bit drier in my experience with foundation sticks. So I held on to it, but I just don't reach for it. I really don't. It's just not something that I like over my other foundations. It's not bad. Again, probably my favorite foundation stick that I have ever tried because it really does have a teeny bit of like radiance to it, and it's quite hydrating on the skin, but I just don't find myself reaching for this, and it just kind of sits there and I look at it and I look over it, and there's gonna be a bunch that I end up keeping, so this one has to go, I think, because it just doesn't get the love that it deserves. And then the next one that I have is the Maybelline Super Stay Activewear. I love this. I think this was the other one that ranked really high in that video. I don't even think I knew this existed until I was like looking for it, and I picked it up on Ulta's website. Let me shake this. Some of these pumps that are like this, they seem to like get stuck. Like the next one that was just like this too, it was like getting stuck on me. This one is a little bit of a thicker consistency, and it's definitely like a more full coverage foundation. This one's too dark too. This is 120 Classic Ivory, and that's just a little bit too deep for me. It's also a little bit too warm is part of the problem. But like Classic Ivory, generally I can get away with Classic Ivory. I don't know why this is turning so warm, or that it's oxidized like in the last 2 months. I don't know, but it's so beautiful. Again, it's up there with the NYX Can't Stop Won't Stop foundation in terms of like really good kind of full coverage mattifying foundations that don't dry me out. So I'm gonna hold on to that one. All right, the last one here is the Givenchy Prism Libre Skin Caring Glow Foundation. I've loved this, but I've had this since I had dry skin, so I've had this in my collection a while. This one is in the shade N120. I really do enjoy like luxury foundations. This one I feel like sinks into the skin really nicely. Again, such a thin formula that it really does change depending upon the powder that you pair it with. You can get more of a natural finish with this. I've gone back and forth on this foundation because I didn't find it overly glowy once I powdered, which is what I always do, but I don't think it was as long lasting. Like I just wore it recently and it faded off faster than I really am looking for right now. Again, it can be a natural finish, but I want it to be a little bit more long lasting than this is. So again, this is one of those products where I like it and I could see myself like wanting to talk about Givenchy products, but it's a foundation. And if you don't pass this along, this will just go bad. And I don't want to do that. But there are other ones I know that I love more than this. And also Givenchy has the other one, the other Prism Libre foundation that isn't the Skin Caring Glow, which I would love to try, but probably not right now. So anyway, I'm gonna regretfully pass this along. All right, here are the next 6. We've got a wide variety here. So the first one up is the Christian Louis Vuitton foundation. I also fell in love with this when they launched this last year. This one is in the shade 15C. It's again really similar to like the Prada Reveal, which is like super lightweight and it just sinks into the skin. Like I love how lightweight it feels. I think this is a little bit too deep for me and I don't think this is cool, which is what I think the C represents, but it's very thin formula. So you can go lighter coverage, but you can also build this up to full coverage, I think. And it just has a beautiful wear. It's one of those like middle of the road foundations that I find probably would work for a lot of people. I think it's again like more luminous matte, but still it's not overly matte. So I do enjoy this and I do want to hold on to this one. All right, next up, probably one of the best full coverage mattifying foundations from the drugstore. It's the Color Stay Full Coverage Foundation from Revlon. This one is in 110. This is actually a very, very light shade. It's maybe even like a little bit too light for me. See, and it has like this peachy tone to it too, or pinky undertone about it. But like once it gets to my complexion, it's definitely lighter than I would typically go. It's just a little bit lighter than my skin tone or when I try and even it out. But this was like the first full coverage mattifying foundation that I tried from the drugstore that I was like, oh, okay, so we can make affordable, but we can make long lasting and we can make beautiful on the skin. I think this gets drier as it sits. So I don't think this is made for anybody else other than people who have combo oily skin. I think it's beautiful, you guys, but I am just not grabbing for something that mattifying right now. I think it's great. And I think that there's probably a time that I might want to go more matte, but I love the natural oils of my face recently. I've been embracing them. That's what I've been doing. Just embracing the natural oils instead of trying to like crush my pores, if that makes sense. If you guys have combo oily skin, like maybe you know. But anyway, with the new embrace of my combo skin, this just doesn't fit. So for that reason, it needs to go. But my sister, who has very oily skin, she might really enjoy that. I could see that being a base product that would work really well for her. All right, one of you guys recommended this, the Matte Ambition Full Spectrum Foundation from CoverGirl. And while I really do think this is like a middle of the road foundation, very lightweight, sinks into the skin, it just didn't have the longevity that I was looking for. And also, it was not like super matte. When I think of matte, I think of like a little bit more long lasting, and that didn't give me it. You know, when I think of like foundations that can work for a variety of different like skin types, I think of the L'Oreal Infallible. Like this has what I think this was trying to go for in terms of middle of the road, lightweight, medium, could be full coverage. It locks down, but it's not overly drying. I feel like this was going for that, but this has the longevity that this doesn't. And that's just my personal opinion. I don't think it's bad at all, you guys. I honestly think this is probably a foundation that a lot of people would like, but probably don't even know exist, because I ended up having to get this from like the website. As far as I know, they don't sell it anywhere other than the website. I've tried to find this elsewhere when you guys recommended it. So anyway, it might be a recommendation for you guys. It's just not something that I know that I'm going to reach for because I don't care for it over my other ones. So I am going to pass this one along. All right, the Revolution Skin Silk, the Luminous Serum Foundation in F4. Not enough people talk about this, in my personal opinion. It is a very serum-like foundation. Like, it's one of the foundations that I will grab when, like, look how lightweight that is. When I'm trying blushes on, like a ton of different blush. This one is too deep for me, but that's okay. I still can make it work. When I blend it out, I don't think anyone notices that it's just a little bit too deep for me because it's so lightweight. You know, it's just not super full coverage. That's when I can't get away with shades like this, usually, is what I think. But anyway, it's just such a lightweight formula. It's very skin silk, I'm telling you guys, just like it says. Again, not enough people talk about it. It was one of my favorite releases, I think from this year, like the very beginning of this year. And I think this went into my best of beauty, I'm pretty sure, unless I'm totally remembering that incorrectly. But it's so lightweight that it comes off and goes on like super easily. It's a very blendable foundation, super blendable. And this like tiny bit of radiance, this little bit of luminosity, it's just so beautiful. But it also has decent lasting power. Again, I feel like this is in the realm of dry to combo skin. Don't think this would work for someone with oily skin, but across enough different skin types. So I'm definitely holding on to that one. If you guys are looking for the most full coverage of them all and the most mattifying foundation, it's the I Am Magic Juvia's Place. It's so whipped and thick and it's so full coverage. This is too light of a shade for me. It always has been. I always get too light of a shade from Juvia's Place. It's in Isla 730. I did the same thing with the I Am Magic. What was the other foundation? I don't know. I decluttered it a while ago. But look how mattifying that is. Look how full coverage that is. It's a little bit too much. Again, when I'm trying to embrace my oils, I ranked this high. Like, don't get me wrong. If you guys saw that video, you know this is one of the better ones that really does mattify and lock down and last and doesn't look like shit. But it's not what I'm looking for if I'm embracing my oils, which I'm trying to do. So for that reason, I know my sister with her very oily complexion might love it. So I'm gonna pass it along. All right, the final one here is the Estee Lauder Double Wear. This is a repurchase for me. I got this when I was doing that video. This one is in 1N0. And previously, I actually had a shade that was too dark for me. So I think I got a better shade match this time around than I had before in this foundation, but I got it for that video, the same thing. And I love this. This is such a good, lightweight, medium coverage foundation that honestly lasts. That's really what I'm looking for. I love a lightweight formula that's longer lasting. It's my favorite. It feels good going on. I love when it's nice and blendable. I love when you don't have to add a ton of coverage to get medium coverage out of it. And I like when it lasts a good amount of time, which usually means it's a little bit more mattifying, soft matte, mostly. So anyway, this is gorgeous. This is so gorgeous. I love a lightweight formula. So that one definitely stays. All right, here are the next 6. So starting from the left-hand side, the MAC Studio Fix Fluid 24-Hour Matte Foundation plus Oil Control. Okay, so I'm pretty sure this is like a newer release, but it was not what I was expecting. I bought it for the video again, but also because I've been wanting to try more from MAC, especially last year. But even though this one came out, I think this year, it didn't perform very well on me. I don't think it was overly long lasting. I think my oils broke it up. It's funny because this is a thinner weight foundation. It just did not wear well on me, like at all. So I didn't enjoy this. It really looked kind of cakey by the end of the day. So this one for sure I'm going to pass along. All right, the Smashbox Always On Foundation. I really do like this. I do, but this is too deep of a shade. It's an L10N, and I think it's too warm as well. It is, again, kind of the middle of the road foundation where it's like, I don't know, it's got a luminosity and a dewiness to it, but it also dries down pretty well and has decent lasting power, but look how deep that shade is. Nope. And it doesn't perform better or isn't as long lasting as some of the other ones that I've been talking about and have kept so far. So it's gotta go because the shade is just so bad on me. Every time I put it on, I'm like, oh man, this is not good. And it's not that I can't get, but I don't have a mix-in to lighten my foundations. I could, you guys, if I was totally in love with the formula and I didn't have a million foundations already that I'm gonna keep, I would get it and I would change some of my favorites, but it's not one of my absolute favorites. So for that reason, I can pass it along. All right, the About Face foundation. This is the Performer foundation in the shade L1 Cool. I actually feel like this should be listed more for like rosy undertones, or it has a rosy undertone, because it's a little bit warm in my opinion, or almost like got this peachiness about it. This is a beautiful foundation. Again, it's such a middle of the road foundation. How do you say middle of the road without saying middle of the road? I mean, it's again so lightweight, blends in super easily. It's light to medium coverage. I don't think it's full and I don't think it can get there, but it has decent lasting power and it looks very skin-like. That's it in a nutshell. So holding on to it. The MAC Studio Fix All Over Face Pen. I bought this as a foundation, but I think was marketed originally as a concealer. This is an NC15. It has like one of those little strange like funnels, you know? It's like a funnel on the end. And you twist the bottom and then you push it out. This is a very full coverage product and it's a little bit drying on the skin. It's a good shade match for me though. I think the new concealer that came out, I think I also picked up an NC15, or I haven't actually checked out with my cart, but I want to get it. It's a full coverage, and so I'm a little bit worried because usually full coverage means drying, especially if it's like this formula, which is just a little bit too drying. Like it takes a while to dry down and it looks good. And I think it's a really good shade match, like I said, but it's too dry as the day goes on. It's kind of the same thing that I found with the matte foundation that I just went over, this one, the Studio Fix foundation. I don't know. I'm not like in love with the MAC complexion products, the two that I tried. So I'm gonna pass that along again to my sister, who could use a more mattifying foundation, which I think you can use that all over the face, as the name implies, all over face pen. Okay, the Dr. Jart BB Premium Beauty Balm. This made it through my Foundation a Day series where I was testing products that were like this in my collection because I just didn't need a ton, but I've had this for a while now. It's honestly, it's just old and it needs to be thrown out. It's very similar to the Misha BB cream, you know, with like this gray tone to it, and then you rub it in and then it kind of like meshes with your skin tone and doesn't come in a whole ton of shades. And it's really pretty. It's got this like nice luminous finish and it doesn't like come off instantly, but it's not the longest lasting. It's just, I haven't reached for it in so long at this point. It's old, it's got sunscreen in it, it's over 12 months old. I know that I keep products with sunscreen in it longer than that, but I'm trying not to. I'm trying to get better about it. I've had this for years, you guys, so this does have to just be tossed. And this is new to me, the Tear Tear Red Cushion Foundation. And I talked about this in my speed reviews video that I love this puff. And I only love this foundation with this puff because it presses it into the skin and it makes it look so blurring. I think it helps it sink in and last longer because it's a cushion, you know, it's like a liquid, like purely liquid. It's really lightweight and it sinks into the skin pretty nicely, except when I used a brush and a sponge to push this into the skin. I don't think I got the same smooth that I got when I used this puff. I don't think I got the same longevity as when I used that puff, but I really do like it. I don't think it's the longest lasting, but it's pretty damn full coverage with this puff. So because it's new and I do like it, you guys, I'm gonna hold on to it. Okay, this next group of 6, I already know none of them are leaving because I enjoy all of these. So the Supergoop Protect Tint with SPF 50. This is a newer release, but I reviewed it in my Best of Beauty for 2024 so far, and I think this is a beautiful product. It's more like sunscreen with tinted pigments in it, is kind of how I feel about it. It's in 20C, but it's so, again, really lightweight and very hydrating on the skin. It's not the greatest for longevity, but it's very natural looking. So I took this on a trip and I used a ton of it. Like that was all I was using for a week. So I think it's kind of like down here now, somewhere around there. So that one I'm definitely holding on to. And then another one of my favorites, as you can see, is the Lancome Tint Idole Ultra Wear Care and Glow. And this one is in the shade 105W, which I actually don't think it's that warm. I think this is kind of a deeper shade, but still super beautiful. This is an interesting formula, very different than what I typically go for. It's more mattifying, even though it says Ultra Wear Care and Glow. It's a whipped and like thicker texture, but for whatever reason, this like sinks into my skin so beautifully, so perfectly, looks so natural in the skin. It gives me like medium to full coverage. There's nothing glowy about it. Like immediately you guys can see how much drier it is than the skin tint next to it and how quickly this sunk into the skin. It's a much more mattifying foundation, but it's gorgeous. And I've used such a good chunk in comparison to a lot of my other foundations, especially because I have a larger collection. So having used that much is like a win for me, I feel like, so I'm gonna keep that. Then the Revlon Serum Tint with SPF 15. This one's a good shade too, in 113. This is so beautiful. It reminds me a lot of the Revlon Illuminance foundation, but maybe not as long lasting, but it's my kind of serum lightweight formula that sinks really nicely into the skin and is a little bit radiant, but also because it's so lightweight, it's very susceptible to like anything that you put on top of it, so I can mattify this really nicely. Again, not as long lasting I think as the Revlon Illuminance, but still really decent longevity, so that stays also. All right, the YSL All Hours foundation. This is a, I think, luminous matte foundation, yes, with SPF 30. This one is in the shade LN1. Of all of the foundations that I've been talking about that are like luxury foundations, like the Givenchy that I decluttered, the Gucci that I decluttered, I like this one the best because it's a luminous matte and it's super lightweight. This though, I feel like has a tendency to get dry on my skin. So it's a foundation that I'll reach for when it's like really hot outside, or if I feel like I'm gonna be outside quite a bit. But I love the SPF part of it that the Gucci doesn't and that the Givenchy doesn't have. And I think this is just a much silkier, softer formula. So of those three, it was kind of like, which one do I keep? I could have chosen like any one, I suppose, but I think this one made the cut in terms of like just having an overall better performance in a variety of like different days and scenarios. So I'm gonna hold on to that one. This is another repurchase. It's the HD Liquid Coverage from Catrice. This one is in the shade 010 Light Beige. This is my quintessential foundation. It's pretty matte, it's pretty medium to full coverage, and it's like super serum-like, which is what I love. And it sinks into the skin beautifully. It's not too dry. So I think there are several in here that I'm keeping that are definitely like more on the mattifying side, and I want to pare that down. It's definitely not the Revlon Colorstay Full Coverage Foundation, and it's definitely not the Juvia's Plays, but something like this and the Estee Lauder that I showed you, or the Pure 4-in-1 Love Your Selfie foundation, those are like nice mattifying more full coverage foundations that don't look too dry that I'm willing to hold on to. So she stays for sure. All right, another one of my favorites from the drugstore, and you guys can see how much of this I've used, and it's like used and abused, you guys. This is the kind of stuff I like to see right here, okay? You know I've loved it and I've used it because I make an absolute mess of it. It's the L'Oreal True Match Super Blendable Foundation that came out last year, at the very beginning of last year. This is my other favorite drugstore foundation. Again, just like the Revlon, very lightweight, very medium coverage, but highly susceptible to the stuff that you put on top of it. So if you want to make this a little bit more long lasting, powder. Use a little bit of a heavier powder. If you want this to be a little bit more radiant and more skin-like and kind of sheer, you can do that too. And not all products are made like this. This is another one that I reach for when I am trying out new blush and I'm taking off foundation and I'm putting it on. It's so skin-like, you guys. If you have not tried this and you really do like something that's super skin-like, but like has the capability to be really customizable, this is fabulous. Fabulous. Okay, the next 6 are here, and actually one of these I've already decluttered. The Makeup by Mario one I've put in my reference library, so you guys may have seen me declutter this in my last foundation declutter. Now, my reference library consists of things that I've technically decluttered from my permanent collection, but have held onto in case I want to talk about in future videos, which I do not want to talk about this one anymore. I never did end up talking about it ever in comparing like to other base products or just really any reason reason. This one is in too deep of a shade in 5N. It's way too dark, way too dark. I didn't like this. It didn't sink into the skin well. Can you see it like grip my skin? This is the kind of product that I would normally stay away from because it's just thick. It's a thicker feeling. Like even if you use less coverage and you sheer it out, it's just a heavier weight foundation in general. And foundations like this, I will say this over and over and over again, they don't sink into my skin well and they just don't look super natural. So I haven't used this for comparisons, so I'm going to pass it along. The NARS Soft Matte Complete Foundation in Mont Blanc Light 2. I bought this for that same matte foundation video, and I think a lot of you even said that this one would be one to try. And believe it or not, this is a very lightweight formula that I just don't like. It's super full coverage, but it dries. It dries down way too much and it looks super dry on my skin. And I'm just surprised that a formula this thin can dry down so hard that it just doesn't look very good. So this one, I think I've even said that, you know, when I get a chance, I'm gonna pass it along. It's not like drying down now, but like, look at the edges. Can you see like how it kind of oxidizes? Like once it starts to dry, it like even gets darker. See the edge around there? I don't know, something about this. It may take a while to dry down, but once it does, you guys, it's like powder. And it's too much. It's too intensely matte for me, especially now that I'm trying to like embrace my natural oils and stop trying to hide that I have combo skin. So I'm gonna pass this along. The L'Oreal Infallible Pro Matte Foundation in the shade 101.5. Surprisingly, even though this has a matte finish, I don't think it's as long lasting as the L'Oreal Infallible. It's really weird. You'd think it would be because it's like this pro matte, like it says, but it is, it's not as long lasting as the L'Oreal Infallible. And it's honestly, it's too deep for me too. Will I miss this? I don't know. It's kind of a lightweight formula. And it's not too matte. I think it's just a little bit too dark. Like I'm looking at it now, I don't remember this super well. Like in terms of the shade match for me, I just remember that the 24-hour wear that it claimed that it had, it didn't. But yeah, like look how dark this becomes once it like starts to dry down. So this is just too deep for me. I'm gonna pass it along. My sister's a little bit more like darker complected than I am, not by much, but like maybe a little bit. She's got darker hair, she's a little bit darker than me. And then the CoverGirl True Blend Matte Made in L50. This I again bought for the video. I think this shade is also, look at it, it's just way too orange. I actually really liked this one over the CoverGirl Matte Ambition. This one just had better longevity. It's also a very lightweight formula. I think very similarly, it stayed a lot longer, but this is an affordable foundation. Like I could repurchase this if I wanted to. This is just, I think it's like too deep of a shade. It's too warm too, especially on my hand where I'm a little bit darker on my arms than my face, especially covered in freckles. So I think this is too dark for me. So I'm gonna pass it along. You guys, we are making quick work and honest work of these foundations. I'm feeling so good about it. So let's keep going. The Laura Mercier Real Flawless Weightless Perfecting Foundation. These names in 2N1 Cashew. Again, it's a little bit too deep, but it's something I made work. I have liked this foundation because it's like the Ritual de Fille. Look at that. It's so lightweight. It's so warm. It's so oil-based on the skin. It gives decent longevity, but it's so thin. So thin, and it's more of a natural finish, but this shade is too dark for me. It always has been, because that's how I shop. Can't shop for my perfect shade online. I tend to do that to myself. But if I were to keep a foundation that performs similarly to this, I would keep the Ritual de Fille over this. But honestly, I don't need either of them. This does not have the longevity that the Ritual de Fille does. This fades off a lot faster because it really is this kind of like natural finish. It's not too matte, it's not too glossy. It's kind of beautiful, really. It's a really nice kind of elevated formula, but it just doesn't have the longevity that I'm looking for. So I am gonna let it go. All right, the very last one here is the Iconic London Super Smoother Blurring Skin Tint. This one is in the shade Natural Light. Guys, I think I'm gonna put this one on the chopping block. I love how smooth this makes my skin look, but it has the longevity of nothing really, not a lot. This is honestly too deep of a shade for me again, but it's that lightweight formula that I really like. It's just, I haven't been reaching for it, and I honestly think it's just a little bit too deep. So because I like the smoothing aspect of it, I want to put this in a chopping block, so I'm going to keep it for now. But I do honestly believe that the Huda Beauty new blur tint, that's what I'm calling it because I can't remember what it's called, I think that it gives me what this gives me, but that may have a little bit more lasting power than this one does. So once I've tested this again, I'll see whether or not I want to keep it, especially now with having the Huda one. Like, I don't need it if this doesn't knock my socks off, but for now we'll hold on to it. All right, I counted the e.l.f. as 1 instead of 2 because they're just 2 different shades. So I'm actually a combination of both of these shades in the Soft Glam Satin Foundation. I don't think I realized like how close these shades would be when I bought them, but I wasn't sure which one would work for me, and for $8 I felt like I don't want to take the risk, so I bought 2 shades, which is very unusual for me. I have 20 and 13. The 20 is light cool and 13 was fair neutral, which is normally what I would get, but I was so afraid this was going to come out warm that I wanted to try something cool. So anyway, but it's a beautiful formula, which is really surprising because e.l.f. is one of the few companies that can make a more whipped textured foundation that I can either love or absolutely hate. And this is one that I really do enjoy. It's not super lightweight, it's a little bit thicker, but it's not as thick as their e.l.f. Camo CC cream, even the hydrating one. Something about this is very natural in the skin. Again, not super long lasting, but just very natural. Right down the middle, but it has that like grippiness to it, that little bit of stickiness to it. But this was one of my favorite releases of 2024 so far. I think that it's a bang up product and job from e.l.f. where we'll talk about one that I thought was freaking horrendous. I hate. We'll talk about one of their complexion products coming up. All right, this next one here, the IT Cosmetics CC Plus Natural Matte. Here's a prime example of like whipped textured foundations that I cannot stand, that don't work for me. This one is in the shade something too dark. Fair BG, I guess, but it's too deep. Do you see how whipped this is? Like, it's not moving. So it never ever sinks into my skin. Like, look how thick that looks. So either I have like the smallest pores in the history of Poreville or something, but I never find that IT Cosmetics products ever sink into my skin. And I like natural matte. Okay, don't get me wrong. You guys heard me, like soft matte's my thing, but this is not that really. It's super drying and it's super thick. It just never sinks into my skin. So the first thing that it wants to do after like 2 hours is just lift off of my face, and it's highly noticeable, especially when it starts to like separate around my nose, which is where I get the most oily. And so because it's just sitting on my skin, then my oils start meshing with it and then make it look all weird and cakey, and that's terrible. So haven't found a complexion product from IT Cosmetics that I like, and it's because all of them, I think personally, are really whipped in texture. None of them are like super lightweight. Even their foundation in the glass jar, can't remember what that is, but anyway, just doesn't sink into the skin. But I've given my sister some complexion products from IT Cosmetics, and then it's so funny, she was talking about it recently when we were doing something for Labor Day. She was like, oh my god, that little one, the one in the tube, and she was talking about the Bye Bye concealer from IT Cosmetics. She was like, I love that, and I hated that. That was very similar to this. It was dry, it was cakey, it just sat under my under eyes, but she loves it. She loved it. I had no idea. So this actually might work for her because she's got, I don't know, no problem with thicker weight foundations, it seems. So declutter this. Guys, I'm doing so good on the declutter. I feel so good. All right, the Diamond Perfector from Physicians Formula. I hear a lot of people not like this. This is fair to light. I mean, I don't like the shade range in anything Physicians Formula, that's for darn sure, but I really enjoyed this complexion product. I thought that it was lightweight, and it sunk into the skin just fine. Like, everything that I like about a middle of the road product is kind of right here. It's not too matte, it's not too luminous, it's not too heavy, it's not too much coverage. It sinks in and looks very natural in the skin. I think I'm gonna chopping block this though, because I feel similarly about this and the Iconic London, that I don't hate them, but I don't necessarily reach for them over the other ones because they're not the most long lasting. That's really it. It's just, it comes down to longevity for me. how long does it last in the shorter period of time? Usually I'm like, okay, it's gonna be a long day today, folks. I need something that's gonna last. And then I'll grab for the one that I know is going to last over the ones that don't, even though they're beautiful. So I'll chopping block this one as well. All right, the Maybelline Fit Me Matte and Poreless. I loved the dewy and something. This is in 112. I think again, this is like classic ivory. No, this one's natural ivory. I wanna say this one's a little bit too dark too, but I bought this for that same video and I love this. I just think Maybelline in this Fit Me, they do such a good job because this is such a, like, look how runny this formula is. It's lightweight, it sinks into the skin, but it's matte and poreless. I love it. I love it. It gives me everything that I hope for in a foundation and has the longevity. So I think this is more light, medium, buildable coverage, but I don't think it starts out like super medium right away because it's such a thin formula. But anyway, it has the longevity. It's not overly matte though, like I said, just kind of middle of the road. And I really do enjoy this and have enjoyed this since I tried it in that video. All right, one that I got on a whim, I think because I just wanted to try something Chanel, and it's kind of one of those luminous matte foundations. It's the Flawless Finish foundation, but it has like a luminous matteness about it. This one is in the shade B10. This is gorgeous. This is probably my favorite like luxury foundation in my collection right now. I mean, it's up there with the Christian Louis Vuitton and the Prada, but maybe I like this one. Ooh, my nail just scratched it. Oh, that sounded like nails on a chalkboard. I maybe like this one even more because I think the longevity on this is a little bit better than the other two. I could have gone with a lighter shade and a cooler one, but it's so what I'm looking for. You didn't get too aggressive with this foundation. It's basically what it is. They just wanted to bust out with some medium coverage that sinks into the skin that looks like pretty natural. So that's what this is. I love this foundation, have been loving it a lot recently, so I'm gonna hold on to it. Now I picked up the Lancome Tint Idole Ultra Wear because I loved the Care & Glow so much. And so many people love this one. And I, again, was looking for something more mattifying and more full coverage. And this one is in 105W. So I ended up getting this in the exact same shade as the other one because it was working for me, even though I think it's a little bit warm and dark. But I didn't love this one as much as the other one. This, again, is like sticky. It's like a stickier formula. But this one was like thicker. If that's at all possible, something about this was just a little bit more thick than the Care & Glow. I don't know. See how it like almost like dries down instantly? I think I'm gonna chopping block this one too. So far I'm chopping, blocking. That's such a weird thing to say. These three, because I haven't reached for them like recently. I have no relative data to draw against to make decisions about these. I wish I did, but I wanted to film this video and it was honestly only these three foundations I feel like I'm kind of on the fence about. There might be like one more, but that's probably it. And that's good enough. Out of 60 foundations to not feel a certain way about 4, I'm probably doing pretty good. So I'm gonna hold on to that one and test those 3 in probably like my everyday makeup drawer so that I can make final decisions on. All right, you guys, here are the next 6. So the Charlotte Tilbury Airbrush Flawless Finish Foundation was once one of my absolute favorites, or it was my absolute favorite the last time I did a foundation declutter video, which I can't even remember when that was. It's in 3. I'm gonna have to chopping block this too. Honestly, this is a really similar formula to some of my favorites, which is pretty lightweight, but it's pretty medium coverage, maybe full coverage right away, but it has really good lasting power and it's not too dry, but it's kind of like this soft matte finish. But I haven't reached for it and I don't know why. Probably because I've been testing just a bunch of other foundations and I found other ones that I love more than this, but I also noticed that this is too deep on me. Like I didn't notice that before. It's just now it's like oxidizing. I had another complexion product from Charlotte that oxidized too, the Beautiful Skin Foundation in the tube, and it turned so dark I ended up having to get rid of it even though I really did enjoy it. So I will chopping block this one too. And I think that's probably the last one that I still want to like think about because I've loved it so much, or it was my favorite in my whole collection at one time. When I said that e.l.f. can do a really good whipped consistency foundation really well or really bad, this is the really well. This one is in my Project Pan. I haven't gotten farther than right here and I've had this foundation for years, so I'm probably gonna have to like let it go at some point. It's the Flawless Satin Foundation. So I don't know if this is gonna be phased out by the new Soft Glam or not, but see how it's like thick? It's pretty medium to full coverage, but you guys, it sinks into my skin very similarly to this. I have not known e.l.f. to do a thin foundation, like a watery foundation. I've always known them to do like these super whipped textured foundations, but this one became my holy grail a while back. It's my second least expensive foundation. This is $6. This is $8. The cheapest one is the A-Way Studio, but it's so beautiful. It's so long lasting on the skin. It's like sticky. It reminds me of the consistency of the Tintidol. I mean, they both are like grippy and kind of sticky, but kind of a soft matte finish, even though I feel like they're supposed to be satin or care and glow. So anyway, I guess it is kind of like a satin finish, but it's gorgeous. I can't let it go yet, you guys. I'm definitely enough in love with this product that I'll see it to the end. I will probably see this until this turns, until it starts smelling on me, or I've used it up, one of the two. All right, I definitely lied. I definitely have one more on the chopping block. This next one, the NARS Light Reflecting Foundation. I've done pretty good in using quite a bit of it, I feel like, but the lid doesn't stay anymore. How did it ever stay is what I want to know. Like, where's the thing that broke? I don't know. This one is in DeVille, I want to say. Yes, DeVille. I didn't like this when this first released, and somehow it managed to stay in my collection because it was so popular when it released that by the time my skin started to turn combo, I tried this again and then I liked it because I think it is made for combo to oily skin. I don't think it's super luminous, you guys. I think it has a satin or like soft matte finish, but I think that's great for what I'm looking for now. I just think it's a little bit thick, and maybe that's why I haven't like fallen head over heels for it, but I still want to chopping block it because I've loved it so much more now with, you know, combo skin. So one more I'm going to throw into the chopping block, and I think that makes 5 total, which is not too much to test, okay? All right, brand new to me, the Patrick Ta Major Skin Hydra Luxe Luminous Foundation. I think everyone is hating this. I don't hate it. I don't hate it. I wore this just yesterday. I've worn this a couple of times. It's a lighter weight formula, but it's again a little sticky. It feels like the Super Goop Protect Tint. Like, it's so luminous, it has like a tackiness about it, but the minute you powder over it, it's like the luminosity is gone. And it's kind of more on the sheer side. Like, it says it's medium coverage, but it's definitely more sheer, more natural finish. I haven't even posted my wear test video on this, but this is staying for now. I mean, it's so new, plus I don't hate it. All right, I don't know about this one. My Dior Backstage Face and Body, it's also in my project pan, but I've made no progress. No progress. This one is in the shade 1.5N. Guys, this is years old in my collection, and they've reformulated this, but I don't love the reformulation. I don't love it more than this one. I'm just like, what do I do? I haven't reached for this in so long that I don't know. I don't know. I prefer this formula more than the other one. So I feel like if I was gonna keep any one, it would be this one. And then I couldn't talk about the reformulated version at all as like a comparison, but I haven't done that. This came out of my closet for my reference items. So I'm like, I'm on the fence. Do I keep the one that I've been trying to pan but haven't been reaching for? Because that tells me that I'm not loving it as much as some of the other ones, and I would only use it for personal use anyway. I wouldn't use this on camera necessarily. I've done such a good job decluttering. It feels like this one for me, I knew was gonna be tricky, and I feel like I've done such a good job. I don't need to force myself to make a decision. Like, this isn't gonna make or break my collection. So I think that I'll use this one and this one again, actually, and see which one performs better, and then I'll make a decision to declutter one or the other. But for now, I'm gonna hold on to both. And this one is the LYS Triple Fix Serum Foundation. You guys can see I've used a decent amount of this too. And if you know me and the fact that I love LYS Triple Fix Serum Concealer, yeah, it's a long time love with that. Also a long time love with this too. This also reminds me of the Protect Tint by Super Goop. It's a little bit of a tackier formula. It's pretty like light to medium coverage, but it sinks in nicely. It's just that this is like old. This is old. It's just time to go. I feel like I even decluttered this or had planned on decluttering it at some point, but it's going officially now, and it needs to go in the garbage because it's a very old foundation in my collection. Okay, I'm gonna pull out these 5 next. And I was wrong. I have 61 foundations because I forgot I had the new RMS Sun Cover Up Skin Tint. Now, I have released my thoughts on this. I just put it back in the box because I am not going to hold on to it. It's not good for me. It's one of those like thicker foundations that I've talked about before. It just doesn't sink into the skin. Like it sits on top, which is funny because it's like really runny, but it's like thick. And it just does that thing where it doesn't sink into my skin and then it breaks apart the minute I start getting oily. It's a decent shade. This is the lightest shade that this foundation comes in. And I don't think that's enough, quite honestly, but I cannot get this to work for me. I have tried stamping it in with a brush. I've tried pouncing it in with a sponge. I've tried doing lighter layers. It's not a foundation that sinks into my skin at all. So it's just not usable because of that. And it feels like it would like work. Like it doesn't feel very different than some other ones. It just, when push comes to shove, it just sits there and doesn't budge, doesn't sink in, doesn't look natural. So I don't like it, but it's new, so it can't go anywhere yet because I haven't even done like my full speed reviews on it. So if you're not like someone who watches my speed reviews, now you just got like a mini review. But for now, she stays. Now the Haus Labs foundation, I don't like this. I'm of the minority who do not like this foundation. It's again, thick. It's too thick. I don't think a lot of people have like a hard time getting this to sink into the skin. And this is like some people's like holy grails, but it's too thick. Again, when push comes to shove, my skin does not suck this product in. It just doesn't do it. And I held on to it for reference. This one is in the shade 110 Light Neutral. It's also very deep. But because it's such a popular foundation, I'm still gonna hold on to it in reference. I thought I would pull it out because I pulled out everything else that was in my reference library because I was decluttering a bunch of stuff that was in there. But this is one that I'm still gonna hold on to in that reference library, but it's literally the only one that I'm gonna keep. Okay, the next one up is the Danessa Myricks Serum Skin Tint. I haven't loved the Danessa Myricks base products. Even the primers I haven't really liked. This is the only one that I do like. It's a little bit of a thicker consistency. It's like a little bit whipped, but it sinks in just fine. It's kind of like a gel feeling. I think this is just very, very light coverage that doesn't last very long on me. So I skip over it like quite frequently. Again, I'm looking for something that's a little bit more long lasting and this just doesn't have it. Plus this is a little bit too deep of a shade if I go in with heavier coverage in shade 4. So I am gonna pass this one along. It's not that I don't like it, I really do. Honestly, it's the only base product and or like primer that I really do enjoy from Danessa, but I like so many other ones. So I'm gonna pass that one along. And then the Moira Beauty Complete Wear Foundation. So I was telling you guys that I liked this one, but that the Soft Matte Complete Wear foundation from Moira Beauty was just a little bit longer lasting than this one, like surprisingly. This is kind of a whipped texture, but it does sink into my skin. It's just that the shade is really kind of awful for me. It's way too dark. What shade is this? 250 natural buff. It's so deep for me. So I like the other one. I really only need one, I think. I don't need both. And because I like that one so much more, I'm gonna hold on to it. Plus, I learned from buying the shade too deep to buy the other one in a better shade match for me. So this one I'm gonna pass along. All right, last one here is the Wet n Wild Bare Focus Niacinamide Skin Tint. It's too deep of a shade for me. This one is in light, which I guess I should have gotten fair. I bought this on Amazon. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful skin tint. And I like niacinamide because it kind of helps me control my oils. It's thin, it sinks in, it's like medium coverage, it has good longevity, all the good stuff. All the good stuff. It's beautiful. It's very natural looking on the face, but the shade is way too deep, way too warm. So even though it went into my best of beauty for the releases of 2024, it can't stay because the shade doesn't work for me. Although I would definitely be interested in purchasing a different shade, and I actually might end up doing that. You guys see how many foundations I have. So if I get something in the wrong shade, unless it's a favorite, I won't repurchase it. I might love it, but I won't repurchase it unless it's like a top favorite. So unfortunately, if I screw up, I'm almost 100% likely to not ever get it again because I love testing new things, new complexion products to find the next best one. But this one wasn't like the fave, even though it was absolutely fab. It definitely doesn't beat some of the ones that I held on to. So too deep, gonna declutter. This last group here is the last 3 foundations, and I'm gonna go over this one first because it's so reflective, you can see everything. So hello, there's the camera. So this is the cream foundation and finishing powder duo in the shade Fair 2 from Patrick Ta. I liked this at one point, but I think I liked it more when I had dry skin. You know, I'm not such a huge fan of cream products, but I didn't hate this. It just doesn't sink in the best. I find that like cream products are a little bit thicker. I think when you shear it out, it's a lot better, but still I don't have the best luck with it sinking into my skin. I kept it in my reference library because I wanted to compare it against any other complexion product that Patrick Ta came out with. But guess what? The new foundation launched and I didn't compare, and I don't think I need to compare. I feel like people don't love it, and that was kind of like the bottom line, is that they just didn't love that foundation, where I didn't hate it. So it's just time for me to pass this along. I didn't do the comparison, and it's just not a favorite product of mine, so it's gonna go as well. All right, the e.l.f. Camo Hydrating CC Cream. I have decluttered the original CC cream. This is where e.l.f. does a terrible job, I feel like, with the whipped consistency. It's not dissimilar to the Flawless Satin Foundation that I love, or the Soft Glam. This one never sinks into my skin. It's so thick. Ooh, what it does around my nose when I start getting oily is like it breaks this up and just looks heavy and cakey and never sinks in. That's it. My worst performing foundations is when they break up because they're too heavy, because my skin just doesn't absorb their formula. So I did not enjoy this. This one, by the way, is in the shade Fair 120N. I think it's a really decent shade match for me, but just not a good formula. Too cakey. It even looks dry. By the time you're done putting on your makeup and the day is going on, this looks dry and gross. So I'm gonna declutter this. I also had that in my reference library too. Thought I would do a comparison against some of the other complexion products that I love from e.l.f., but I haven't done it. I don't get around to doing videos like that. Sometimes I will compare and I will pull things back out. I did it today with some Merit Blush Balm dupes. So that was like actually really nice that I had that product to compare it against. But I don't think I do that very frequently with foundations. I just talk about them. I don't bring them back out and put them on. So I don't think I need to hold on to that. The ColourPop Pretty Fresh Hyaluronic Acid Foundation. This one is in the shade Fair 20N. I bought this like on vacation. This is a repurchase for me. And I thought that I would like this. Like, I remember liking it, you know, it's kind of a lightweight foundation that offers like light, medium, or light buildable to medium coverage, but this lasted like 5 minutes on me. It had no lasting power at all, and whatever is the reason for it, it seems like kind of drier on the skin, not hydrating. And sometimes like certain hyaluronic acids, I guess, can do that to me. They can be a little bit more drying, but it didn't have longevity, not even a little bit of longevity. So yeah, I've used it a couple of times, but I am going to pass it along. Ooh, I almost did it. I got rid of 25 foundations out of the 61. So I almost did 50%. I'm somewhere at like 45, right? I think that's, my math is mathing. That is actually so much better than I thought I would do. And I was stronger than I thought I was gonna be too. Because these two, I was like, do I get rid of them? Do I not get rid of them? And like some of these other ones, I was like, well, what if I try it again and I love it, even though I haven't reached for them in months, and the last time I reached for them, I didn't like them. Like especially the L'Oreal Pro Matte. Like this isn't bad. And can I make the shade work? Yeah, like probably. So you guys, I did a really good job. I think I am pleased with this, and I'm gonna pass some of these along. Some of them I'm going to throw away, like the Dr. Jart's gonna go bye-bye. The LYS needs to go in the trash. Like these are years old foundations, and they cannot be passed along to anybody. And maybe even the Patrick Ta I have had like longer than a year. So the rest of these should be like under a year, and I can pass them along, so I feel really good about it. And here is everything I decided to keep, and including the RMS Beauty, you guys. This is everything that I decided to keep. All of these are gonna go back into my permanent collection. This one from RMS Beauty will not, simply because it's gotta go into speed reviews, but also because it's probably not gonna stay anyway. And you guys know I have 5 in the chopping block. After we got all done with everything, there's still 5 that I need to go back in here and test. And I feel confident. I feel good. This feels so good. So I'm very excited. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. I would love to hear some of your thoughts about the stuff that I kept or decluttered in the comments below. If you guys aren't currently subscribed, I would love to see you subscribe, you guys, so that I can catch you in the next video. I'm out of here. Bye, guys.